Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, celebrity interviews, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. Now celebrating 17 years of broadcasting success, here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
And welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again, both for our radio audience here in Mississippi at WYAD 94.1 FM and WYADonline.com. We're glad that you all could be with us. Also, just tuning in through online affiliates around the world, including our friends at iHeartRadio and Amazon Music Podcast. We're glad you all could be with us as well. I think more and more we are taking out the time to think about our health and our health choices, and a lot of us are looking online for information, I think myself included, for ourselves and our family. But where can we go to get the best information? And more importantly, how can we use that information as we're then thinking about our own medical advice as well as where we go to be able to get treated? We're excited to welcome Dr. Kapil Parakh to our program today. He's the co-author of the book, Searching for Health, The Smart Way to Find Information Online and Put It to Use. Dr. Parakh, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You know, I read this book with a lot of interest, and I think one of the big things that I took away from Dr. Parakh, and we can begin the conversation there, is not only being informed, but also making sure that we're taking that information and still being able to seek medical advice. How important has that marriage been for you to share that, yes, it's good for us to do our research, but also make sure that we're also listening to the professionals too?
Yeah, absolutely. That is a cornerstone of the book, and I'm so glad you're leading with that. So I see patients in my practice. As a cardiologist, I still see patients even today, and I feel, and I work at Google the rest of my time, and so that interplay happens almost on a daily basis, a weekly basis in my life, where on the one hand, when I'm seeing my patients, I'm trying to use that time effectively to help them with their care, and sometimes they'll bring in information that they find hard to introduce into the interview, and I have to work with them to try and make that useful. And many physicians don't honestly have the time and capacity to do this. And then in my work at Google, I try and find products to help make that information more available and easy to find. And so combining those two worlds was really the motivation behind the book. So it's really this idea of not only can you find this information, but how do you make yourself heard? All too often we go into a doctor's office and there's a big information gap there. And so it's hard to make yourself heard and to use the things that you found online to share the concerns that you have in a way that's collaborative and effective. So really appreciate you highlighting that.
Yeah. And I think, too, Dr. Parakh, the other thing that I think is so important that you all did in this book is to show that even when it comes to medical professionals, you have to also make sure that you're finding a comfort level as well. You mentioned, of course, when it comes to certain diagnoses, and that's referenced in the book, that yes, listen, but also to kind of think about, okay, what's right for you, and if this might be the right doctor for you. Is that also something you want the reader to know, is the power they have to make sure that they're not only making sound choices, but also choosing the right person to carry out those choices?
Yeah, for sure. I think, having that relationship is so important, and the right doctor can make a huge difference. And sometimes we're not very thoughtful about choosing who we see. So we do provide sorts of recommendations and resources on how you might find a physician that you can collaborate with.
I have to mention mental health because you're mentioning it in a very interesting way in this book, and I think it kind of goes to where we find ourselves as we're dealing with the pandemic. And I think that is that sometimes we could be adding to our own concerns and frustrations and worries by the way that we're searching for things, the things that we're searching, and also what we're listening to. What has that been like for you to watch, especially over the past year, Dr. Parakh, how people, what they're searching online and what they think they may have or may not have, or what may or may not be going on with them, how that has impacted their mental health?
100%. So first of all, just in the pandemic, the nature of the things that we're dealing with has had a huge impact on mental health. And then more specifically, when you think about health concerns, I love to tell you about a syndrome that we see in medical students. I myself have this, where as you read about different conditions, you start to think, I think I might have that pain, or I might have that kind of rash or something like that. And the joke is that every medical student is diagnosed with a fatal illness, because as they read about these, they get very concerned, and then they go see a real doctor, and it turns out to be something pretty mundane. And now, because of the internet, many of us have had that experience. So what we try and recommend is, to write some of the stuff down before you go online, so that when you're reading about it, you don't think you have the symptoms that you might have had. And then also just be thoughtful when you're evaluating that information of how much of it does it really pertain to you, how common are those diseases that you're reading about, how likely is it that you might have one. And then once you make a determination of what you think might be going on, then talk to a physician and really work collaboratively to get to the bottom of whatever it is that you're dealing with.
You mentioned writing things down, Dr. Parakh, and that's another thing that this book does. It not only shares information, but it kind of brings us into the conversation. How important was that for you to have prompts there for them to be able to, as they're reading, to not only just think about, but then also to add their own thoughts about, being honest about themselves and what they're experiencing and how they feel about these things? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, that's a critical part of this work, is to really be a practical guidebook. And so be able to write things down, and we have worksheets and things to help you think through these situations. I find it's powerful to take notes, to actually put these principles into action. And so we try to strike this balance of being informative and interesting by providing insights and so on, but at the same time being practical and useful so that, it actually makes an impact in your day-to-day life.
For those who are just tuning in, either on the radio side or online, you're listening to Conversations Live. We're excited to welcome Dr. Kapil Parakh to our program today. He's the co-author with Anna Dirksen of the new book, Searching for Health, The Smart Way to Find Information Online and Put It to Use. The last thing I want to talk to you about, Dr. Parakh, I found this interesting in the book, too, as someone who served as a caregiver for 9 years of my grandmother's life before she passed away. That's one of the things that you all spend quite a bit of time talking about, whether we're talking about end of life, also caregiving. Why was that important for you to include in a book like this when it comes to our health and looking for options that best fit us in our health?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, kudos to you on taking care of your grandmother that way. It's wonderful to hear. And I find that many of us find ourselves in that situation. Sometimes we call it the sandwich generation, where you're trying to take care of little kids, but at the same time help your parents deal with situations, and then deal with your own health issues. So it was important for us to include those kinds of conversations in the book. I feel like these are sometimes unspoken, or these are questions people should be searching for, but they don't sometimes. And so I think what we wanted to highlight was, first of all, start with where people are at, like searching for their symptoms, as you pointed out, but then try and lead them to other areas where they should also be thinking about, but sometimes we don't think about till it's too late.
I love that one sentence in that section where you guys wrote, in addition to thinking about what's best for the person nearing the end of life, it's also important to think about the well-being of those caring for them. And I think a lot of times caregivers don't get that kind of attention that they need and the support that they need. And I think that is so important and so powerful. What is your hope, Dr. Parakh, when you and Anna were compiling this book and getting ready to release it, what is your hope that readers of it take away from it?
Yeah, honestly, my sincere hope, and Anna's too, the thing that really got us through 4 years of writing, is that we hope that people make better health decisions, that leads to better health for them. And I can share a couple of wonderful anecdotes with, just like you've gotten an early copy, the book comes out tomorrow. We've shared early copies with a few people, and we've already heard back, from somebody who's dealing with cancer and sort of using the book to help guide them through that journey, or somebody else who's learned about triage lines for the first time, and then a couple of days later happened to have a symptom, and they call them and they could get to their medical attention much faster because they now knew how to use the triage lines. So we really just hope that people have a more effective health journey, and that they can find better health through the tools in our book.
Right. Again, everyone, Dr. Kapil Parakh has been our guest, a co-author with Anna Dirksen of the new book, Searching for Health, The Smart Way to Find Information Online and Put It to Use. As you heard, Dr. Parakh mentioned that the book's officially out on April the 20th. And Dr. Parakh, how can they stay connected with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a website, searchingforhealth.org. It's all one word. And, we'd love to keep in touch. And if you have any feedback or stories, we'd love to hear them. It's really what keeps us inspired.
Dr. Parakh, thank you again so much for this book, and thank you for the time. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And we thank you, our audience, for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying, as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live, and let's go make today amazing. Take care.